Hi, everybody. This is Jordan Castillo Price, author of the PsyCop series, and I have an extra special treat for everybody today. I am extra super excited because we are talking to the voice of Victor Bayne, Gomez Pugh. Hi, Gomez.
Hey, Jordan, how are you doing?
I'm good. How about you?
I'm doing well, thanks. I'm doing well. I'm actually in the booth right now working on the next of our books together.
This is so exciting because we've been working together since 2014.
Wow.
And
Yeah, we
Um,
have.
actually, the reason I'm doing this interview is because I'm celebrating the fact that I've been writing romance for 20 years now in 2022. And back when I first wrote Among the Living in 2006, I didn't even realize that independently producing an audiobook would even be possible, that it could even be a thing. So it was really it was really a leap of faith, I think, for me to put it out there in 2014 and just see if it was even something I wanted to do, because it seemed to me that I would be surprised that another person could understand Vic the way I understood him. And so a friend of mine told me, well, just put it out there for audition and see what people do with it, and just see what you think before you even, preemptively decide that it's not a thing that you can do. So I put it out there for audition, and I got some auditions back that were fine. They were okay. But then I got yours.
Well, thank you.
And so when you did audition for it, this was the first audiobook that you did, not your first audiobook altogether, but your first romance audiobook. So
Yeah.
what was it that made you audition for this?
Well, if I remember correctly, the audition sides was the scene where Vic was coming home, and Jacob mashed him up against the mailboxes, and then they headed upstairs, and then all heck broke loose upstairs because I think I don't remember what happened, but there was some incident. But it was the preamble, and he passes. Oh my gosh, can you believe I've forgotten Jackie? Jackie, the
Yeah,
dead
yeah.
hooker. Yeah, yeah. So it was. I mean, I am a huge fan of noir, and I love detective novels, and I love first-person detective novels. And so it was the writing of the sides that really drew me in. I'm like, here's this guy, he's kind of jaded. He's talking to a ghost of a prostitute. This is all awesome. And then when I got to the part where Jacob mashes him up against the mailboxes, I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And he's gay. Great. And I actually didn't realize that it was an romance until after you hired me. And then I read the book and I was like, oh, yeah, okay, great. But at that point I was hooked on the characters and I was hooked on the storyline, and I was just in for the ride. It's now since then you opened the door. I've done a lot of and MF romance, but you were the first, and it was because of the writing. I mean, it was because of the writing, because of the character and just the voice, that drew me in and made me fall in love with Vic almost instantly.
You know what's funny is the first time you and I talked on the phone, I was surprised that you didn't sound more like Vic to me. I
Oh,
think
that's funny. I don't know
Gomez,
how I
Gomez
sound
and
now.
Vic sound different to me,
Yeah.
Um, and so I was wondering, when you're getting yourself into the Victor Bayne headspace, is there anything you preparatory that you do to feel Vic-like, or is there a part of yourself that is just a little bit Vic
There's
sometimes?
a part of myself that's a lot Vic. I think that's too what drew me to the character is, you know, how he sees himself on the inside. I don't think is how he's perceived on the outside.
No.
Um, which I love, and yeah, I mean, I really relate to Vic on. There's so many points of connection. I mean, I guess fortunately I don't see dead people, so that's good. Um, but yeah, like and his growth throughout the series, I've definitely um related to. And then on a more superficial level, what I'm reading right now, there are stories about when they buy the cannery. And as you know, I just bought a house.
Hmm.
So even on a superficial level, I'm like going through so many contractor repair nightmares. Um, but yeah, I think it was, I mean, until he's gotten better about this, he's grown. But in the beginning, before he and Jacob were strong together, or at least Vic didn't realize they were strong. There was so much second guessing he had, and so much self doubt and self talk, and I relate to a lot of that, which made it easy to slip into his character. I mean, I feel like I get where he's coming from, you know.
I was thinking a lot about that too, because right now we're recording seasons, which takes place during all different parts of the storyline, from the very beginning when they're still living in Vic's crappy apartment,
Yeah.
to after the most recent book where they finally get married. And so I had to readjust my Vic headspace a lot in writing that, because in the early ones he's still kind of unsure of the whole thing, and he's positive he's going to figure out a way to screw it up for sure. And no way
Yeah.
is Jacob, once Jacob really knows who he is, Jacob's going to be out of there. He's
Yeah.
sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And it was fun because when, before I record, I go through and I read through the whole book, of course, and, highlight all the different characters. And if they're new characters, you and I talk about it. Um, and so in going through the book or in going through the different stories, I'm like, oh, he's still popping Oracell here. Right. Okay. Oh, yeah, he's talking about, Valium. He's here, he's there, you know. Um, so it was, uh, I thought for a moment about going back and listening to each book that these stories fall in between, but I thought that might drive me crazy because I don't like to listen to my work. I love to do my work, but I don't necessarily love to listen to it. So, because it's like you said, it's been quite a few years, I'm sure the way I voiced him has changed, um, subtly. But I decided consciously not to do that and just come from it where I am now with Vic, even though some of these stories take place, years before.
I mean, that makes sense because people are going to be listening to it all of a piece now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that makes sense to
Yeah.
me.
I did go and grab a couple of quick voice samples of Vic from the first book and like the fifth book, just to make sure that, there wasn't a giant difference in the way he sounded. That was the main thing with the book. And I have to say I love Jacob. And I don't know whether you've ever shared this with your readers slash listeners, but the journey we went to find him in the beginning was very interesting. I don't know that you remember, but you had sent me, because I wasn't sure what you were looking for, and you had sent me a video clip of an actor. And then when I mimicked that and sent it back, and you were like, no, no, that's not what I meant at all. And we kind of went back and forth with it. And so now I love doing Jacob, but physically it's challenging because, like, I don't know if you can hear, I'm in the booth right now. So right now I'm a normal distance away from the microphone. But in order to get Jacob, I constantly have to lean in and, go down to Jacob. But because he doesn't really raise his voice, it's got to be closer to the mic. So if I have a chair that squeaks and I'm
Oh, it's going
going
creak,
back
creak,
and
creak,
forth,
creak.
yeah, I've got to keep stopping and starting. But yeah, it was cool. And I remember in the first collection of shorts that we did, there was one, I think, or maybe more, one short story that was from his POV
Hmm.
that was fascinating to do, right? Because you only get Jacob normally through Vic's perspective. Like he
Hmm.
sees Jacob from the outside, and it was fascinating to get to see Jacob from the inside. Just for those brief pages, however many the short story was. Um, and I was just telling, I have a friend who I recently reconnected with, and she was asking about my audiobook work, and was asking for titles to listen to. And I said, well, I'm right in the middle of this collection of shorts, which I would love you to hear, because I mean, I've just really grown to love Jacob and Vic's relationship is really beautiful,
Wow, thank you.
it's really lovely. And so I was saying I'd love for you to hear this when it comes out, but I don't know whether it'd have the same impact because, when your listeners who have followed the series are listening to this, they have a history with the
Hmm.
two of these guys. And I was like, I didn't want to give my friend the homework of going back and listening to 12 PsyCop books.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I really love their relationship and like the balance of it, and the way that they, like I don't want to give anything away, but one of the stories that I've just recorded is, even from Vic's perspective, occasionally Jacob opens up and shows some vulnerability or some insecurity of his own. And there's one of the stories has a beautiful, there's a really love, and it's funny because it comes out of something very mundane, but it really shows, you know, that Jacob needs Vic as much as Vic needs Jacob. You know what I mean?
I do. What I'm thinking about too is you did a lengthy, the lengthiest psychop was
Oh,
number
Crash.
eight, Skin After Skin. And you did that whole thing in Crash's cadences
Yeah.
and tones. And what's funny is I lost myself in it and I forgot you were being Crash until Vic walked in and said something in Vic's voice. And I'm like, oh wow, they're completely different.
Yeah, yeah. Crash was, and I mean, that's something that we went back and forth with that we talked about because Crash just doing dialogue in Vic's books was not sustainable for the narration, right? That we had to tweak it a little to make it work for the narration of that book. Yeah, so it's interesting too. I've still got some of the original clips. So when you and I talk and you give me an example or an idea of what you're thinking, and then I'll go to YouTube or wherever and pull clips. I have the original clip that I pulled of the actor that I was modeling Crash off of that I still go back to, and it's easier for me to find Crash's voice from that actor's clip than it is from my own recordings of Crash.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. Crash was tough to find, for me. And once now that I found him, like I said, I can go back to that clip, and yeah, subtle bodies, right? He's just a little perkier. He's still as cynical as Vic, or as sarcastic at least. But yeah, subtle bodies. It's like, and I think it's funny. I just read a story in here that reminded me that Crash smoked. And the way I'm reading him is often that he's on the end of his breath when he's talking.
Mm.
If that makes sense. Like, let me see if I can do it. Whereas Vic, I take a deep breath with Vic, and then I can keep talking for a long time. But with Crash, it's almost like I exhale, and then I'm talking. So I don't really have as much air to go on, and it kind of chops up the way that he talks. And I thought it was interesting that he was a smoker.
And
Uh,
and I think Vic does sort of think in long, unreeling, multiple phrase sentences
yeah,
too.
yeah,
So it's a good thing that you have that lung capacity
yeah.
to
Well,
to get
I
the
gotta
Vic
keep.
thoughts out there.
I could probably use some more. I've not in your books, but I've done other books where the sentences, especially nonfiction, where the sentences are so long. In fact, I just before I started your book, I did another book that's actually, I think I can say this. It's actually for the U.S. Army, and
Oh
so
wow.
it's yeah, it's crazy, it's weird, but I don't know how they found me, but their sentences are really long. really, and so I'm like, I got to really, hit pause, take the deepest breath possible, support it, you know, support it with my diaphragm, and then go. Um, and then if you get, there are sentences where I get 2 words from the end, and I'm like just running out of breath. Like,
Oh.
got to start over. So yeah, yeah, but it's been fun. I don't know whether you know this either, but the way we work, I don't work with any other author. Is that normally, and for the listeners and readers, the way ACX works, which is the platform we use, is once I'm hired for a book, I read it, I ask the author questions, and then I'm supposed to present the first 15 minutes of the book fully done so that the author can hear it, and then they sign off on it, and then I continue with the book. But what you and I have developed is, because we've worked together so much, is you don't need to hear the first 15 minutes of
Oh
the
no.
book. Usually what we're doing is a bunch of new character samples so that we're on the same page. And when my producer slash engineer mastering awesome guy, when I told him I was doing that with you, he's like, be careful, that's a slippery slope, because if you do that with a lot of authors, it can become challenging, right? Like then they sometimes get into they can tend to micromanage,
I
you know.
worry about micromanaging. So yeah,
No, I
be
don't
sure to
think.
tell me if I'm ever doing that because
Yeah,
I
no, you're
don't
not.
want
You're
to. Okay,
not.
good.
You always make it clear which characters are, like on this one, because of the short stories, you gave me a short list of characters that were important for you to hear, and I added some to the list because I wanted to make sure that if I wasn't clear about, sometimes I look at a character and I'm like, okay, I know who this guy is or this gal is. But there are others where I'm like, huh, I'm not. I mean, it could go several different ways, and
Hmm.
then and sometimes you don't need to hear the character because you've given me such um a clear description or a clear example. Like I don't remember which book it was from, but the character was Owen Wilson. I think I can say that. Do you
Oh,
remember? He was like,
yeah, I
it was a
do. It was the
short.
annoying ghost who was riding in the back seat and who
Yeah,
like
yeah,
really wanted Vic to find the
yeah.
the
Wow,
guy who sold
man.
him the thing. I love that ghost so much.
Yeah,
He came
and
out
so
great.
so it was easy because I'm like, Owen Wilson, man. He's just, wow. I can't believe you just did that. So he had a that one was easy to latch on to. You know, the one that the one that I love, but that I'm still kicking myself on is oh
I want to
gosh.
say chondritis, but I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah. That's yeah, Dreyfus. Because when he first appeared, I didn't realize he was going to have such a life in the books, and so I knew how I wanted him to sound, but that particular voice is really taxing, right?
Hmm.
To do long term. 'Cause he's here and it gets a little raspy, and if he has to talk a lot, then, don't even worry about it, Vic. It's fine. That if he has monologues, I've got to schedule that appropriately. It's like when you do video game voiceover, they've structured it now so all the screams and grunts are at the end of your session.
Oh, that makes
Because
total sense. Yeah.
right? Because if you did those at the beginning, your voice is blown out and then you can't do the dialogue. So I have to be careful with Khan and schedule it so my voice is really rested when I do him. And I love him. I mean, I love, like, I think, if this ever was turned into a movie or a TV series, I think that's who I would love to play.
I think you would be awesome as chondritis. Yeah, that would be so cool.
you know
Um,
that is who I mean. My voice is Vic, but I think I've seen your photos of or art of Vic, and yeah, it'd be different. But yeah, I'm like, I could get in there and play Khan. That'd be fun.
we were talking about the side characters and having to tweak Crash a little bit because it's different when somebody is like really a side character and comes in and like says a few things as opposed to narrating this whole lengthy book. Like there's
Yeah,
a um how would I say it? But you do have tweak it because there's like a saturation point where you can't be over the top, I think, for too long without it seeming like too much.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that's if I remember right, that's what we worked on because I had to switch him from dialogue to narration and
Hmm.
what does his inner voice sound like, I guess, what does
Yeah.
the voice in his head sound like versus what he sounds like to everyone else. And
And I
yeah.
think, too, he doesn't see himself as being nearly as abrasive as he
No.
comes off when Vic is listening to him.
No, no, it's definitely, yeah, yeah. It's one of those things that like, because I work on camera and I work on stage and it's that acting, it's not a trick, but I guess it's a tool, is that if I'm directing, because I direct too, and if I'm directing something, I'm looking at I don't know the word truth, but I'm looking at the scene more objectively because I'm directing it, I'm looking at the whole thing. But if I'm playing one of those characters, right? Like for instance, if I was playing the Wilson character, I'm like when they ask me what that book is about, I would be like, well, it's about this ghost who is hanging out, and then he finally meets somebody who can help him out, and right, because I'm seeing it all from my perspective, and I think the same thing happens with Vic or with whoever is doing the narration. They're seeing the whole world through their perspective because Crash doesn't think he's annoying at all. He's just right.
Yeah, for sure.
He's just right, and these other people are stupid. I mean, that's really what it is. So, and I think that too, that really helped me with narrating audiobooks is coming from, an acting background and a pretty heavy theater background where I really had to learn how to investigate and develop a character because, when I'm narrating this book, whoever I'm voicing, I'm really trying to take it, um, really trying to come from their perspective and fight for their needs and their truth. Like I think I'm trying to remember what book it was in. It was Carolyn. Um, when she finally, gosh, it's vague, but Carolyn. There's a point where Carolyn kind of confronts Jacob because she's been upset that at the way she was treated or how something was handled. And Carolyn is another character that can come off as abrasive because she doesn't lie and she doesn't white lie and and yeah, but in that particular scene I fell in love with her because she's like you get to see where she's coming from, you
Well,
know.
and she was a lot softer in Skin After Skin too, because you're seeing her through Crash's eyes and she's his friend, whereas Vic is kind of not so subtly scared of her.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
she's
yeah.
intimidating in the
Yeah.
Vic books.
Yeah, yeah. So, but it's a lot of fun to be able to go and even though the book is in Vic's perspective, to go through and play these characters, when they finally, what's the right term? Or like, when Lisa finally says, "Yeah, I can't do the C no anymore. I can't do that for you. I need to take a break." And you get to see she becomes, more than just somebody in Vic's life who's helping him do what he needs to do. She becomes a whole person. Or when she and Khan fall in love with each other.
I thought it was so important that that she would do something that Vic would not approve of because it's her life, and as much as she
Yeah.
likes him.
Yeah, she's got to live her life.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. So it's been quite a journey. It's been, especially this book looking back on all these stories that we haven't heard before, but that are happening between all the books we have heard before. It's been fun to look back on it. And of course, it also allows for, you know, revisiting the cast of characters, some of which we haven't heard from in a while, which is always fun too.
I do have to mention that it's hard for me to, when I proof the audio that you send me, whenever you do Richie, I always have to rewind and do it again because I'm just so busy cracking up. And he has this line, well, this recurring tick, this like nervous giggle that he does, and it's written as HEH dash H-E-H. And we were both like, well, I don't know what this is going to be. And so you sent me, I think, like 3 or 4 different
Oh,
Richie
right, the
giggles. And I
laughs.
just,
Yeah, yeah, I
each one was
forgot
better
about
than the
that.
last. God, it
I
was funny.
forgot about that. It's interesting. Well, we'll talk about this after the interview, but like, because he pops up in this series, and when you just said that, I was like, oh, I don't know that I remember. I don't know that he does the laugh in this one.
Oh, he
Um,
doesn't, does he?
no,
No.
because he's also evolved into becoming so full of himself. You know what I mean? That
Yeah, he
the
is.
laugh might have come from a nervous place, earlier on, but now he's just not nervous because he thinks he's the king of the world, which is awesome. It's awesome. And he's another one that even though I have my own samples of him, I go back to the original source recording that I found. The example I found for him is I go back to the real person talking a certain way, and that's how I find him.
Wow.
So yeah, there's certain ones of those that's how I key in, and then ones that are completely manufactured, then I go back to my own voice sample of it. But yeah, I've got files and files of all not only all the different characters that I've done, but then also all the source material from that. In fact, I had to go back because I had forgotten what Maurice sounded like because we haven't heard from him since it's been a while, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I had to go back and I was like, what does he sound like?
Possibly book two, I'm thinking, because I
Yeah, and
didn't
I didn't even
he
have a voice. I couldn't even find an old voice sample from him. I had to go back. I think it was book two. Yeah, because the retirement party's in book one, but then he shows up in book two. Vic goes to talk to him when he's fishing, I think. And so I think that's it. Or I may be confused. But I went back
Nope.
and I had to go to the original book files and find a chapter that he spoke a lot in and pull those lines so I had them in the booth because he pops back up in um, this collection for a couple of stories.
Yeah, he got some really good big roles in these stories. Readers
Yeah.
were really excited to see him again, so I'm sure they'll be excited to hear him again too
Yeah,
when
he's
the
just super
seasons comes
cool.
out. He's a
He's
cool
just
guy.
super cool. Yeah. Yeah. Um so yeah, it's been quite a journey.
It sure has. Well, I'm sure everybody is just champing at the bit to hear this audio. I know I am. And I just want to thank you so much for taking the time out to come and chat with us. And we're all
Oh, of course.
really looking forward to hearing
Yeah.
it.
I'm getting there. I'm almost done. And then I got to send
Excellent.
it off for editing and mastering. So,
Super.
yeah, but it's been great.
All right. Well, that's been Gomez Pugh and Jordan Castillo Price talking about seasons hitting the bookshelves very soon. Thanks a bunch, Gomez.
You're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome.